Enes Kanter, after calling China's president a brutal dictator and urging a boycott of the Beijing Olympics, things shifted fast. Chinese platforms dropped Celtics broadcasts, and that wasn't just a quiet protest. It was a shutdown that hit hard. Not long after that, he was traded and released by the Rockets, then never signed again. He said it himself. Speaking out about China slammed the NBA door shut for good. Now, Kanter's not new to political controversy. He'd already gone after Turkey's government and got plenty of support for that. But when he set his sights on China, he said that backing just disappeared. It wasn't just tweets either. He testified in front of Congress. He talked about what happened after his criticism of issues in Xinjiang, Tibet, and Hong Kong, and he didn't hold back. He straight up said the league cared more about its business ties than its players speaking up. And here's the kicker. He got a major human rights award for what he did. The 2022 Courage Award. That's not a pat on the back. That's a public acknowledgement that he put his basketball career on the line to speak out. It also made it harder to ignore the pattern. Go after China, lose visibility, lose support, lose a team. The league's commissioner said it wasn't about politics. He claimed Kanter had every right to speak his mind, but no team touched him after that February release. Not one. He was in the middle of his career, and then it just stopped. Kanter said the silence was loud, louder than any public statement the NBA made. No fines, no suspensions, just complete absence. He stood by every word. He made his criticism public. He got cut. He spoke to Congress. And he picked up an award that called his activism brave. There's no conspiracy in that. It's a straight timeline. Speak out, lose platform, and never get back in. It's a story that doesn't rely on rumors. It's all backed up by dates, testimony, and the league's reaction, or lack of one. Craig Hodges. He was one of the best three-point shooters of his time, led the league in shooting percentage twice, and dominated the All-Star contest 3 years straight. He once hit 19 shots in a row. 19. And still, right after helping the Bulls win their second straight title, he was out. No injury, no retirement, just gone. In October of 1991, he wore a dashiki to the White House, handed an 8-page letter to the president, and used the team's visit to talk about racism, inequality, and police violence. He made 9 shots in a row on the South Lawn too, because of course he did. The man didn't miss. But then came the fallout. The very next season, his minutes vanished, from playing key rotation minutes to barely touching the court. Then, after the Bulls won again, he was waived. Not a single team touched him after that. Not one. He said it himself. Teams wouldn't even return calls. His agent couldn't get him a meeting. Sure, Jerry Krause said it was about age and defense, but Phil Jackson wasn't buying it. Others weren't either. Hodges estimated he lost $40 to $50 million in potential earnings. That's not a little dip. That's a total vanishing act. He even sued the league for $40 million, claiming he was blackballed. That lawsuit didn't stick, but it put his side of the story on the record. He didn't say maybe. He said everyone knew it wasn't about his game. Before all this, he was the player's rep on every team he played for. He even pushed for a boycott during the 1991 finals over Rodney King. He challenged Jordan and Magic to speak out. Magic said it was too much. Jordan, he called him crazy. After the NBA shut the door, he went overseas. He played in Turkey and Italy for a while. Then came coaching, college, assistant gigs, even working under Phil Jackson again. What sticks is the timing, the activism, the letter, the sudden disappearance. He had game. That wasn't the problem. He just used the spotlight for something bigger, and the spotlight turned off. Michael Beasley. In May of 2025, he flat out said there's no reason he shouldn't be playing basketball. He called it exactly how he sees it. Said he's been blackballed, not overlooked, not in a slump. Blackball. He didn't point fingers at specific people, but the message couldn't be clearer. He's still got game, and he's tired of sitting on the sidelines for reasons that make no basketball sense. He talked about how he stayed ready, his stats overseas, and in recent summer league action backed it up. He didn't offer exact numbers in the interviews, but reports described his play as solid, still consistent, still effective. He's not out there hobbling or missing open shots. He's been hooping and waiting for the call that never comes. It's not the first time Beasley's hinted at feeling pushed out, but this time, he said it plain. No teams, giving him a legit reason for the silence. He's not injured, he's not done, and he's definitely not going quietly. The term, blackballed, didn't come from an outsider, it came from him. He believes this has nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with something behind the curtain. Now, Beasley didn't get into whether it was about reputation, past drama, or politics, inside front offices. He just said, it doesn't add up. A guy with his talent, still performing, still healthy, still ready, and yet no interest? That's not just a cold streak. That's a freeze out. The frustration in his voice wasn't subtle. He didn't sound like someone begging for one last shot. He sounded like someone who knows he should already be on a roster. He believes he's being locked out, while players with less production or potential keep signing contracts. It's his words, his perspective, and his claim. No conspiracy theories, no anonymous tips. Just a veteran who's played around the world saying clearly, this isn't about ability. This is about being shut out. He didn't retire. He didn't slow down. He got benched by a system he thinks stopped caring about the game and stopped being fair. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Before the anthem protest made headlines, he was lighting it up in Denver. He led the league in free throw percentage, dropped 51 in a game, and won Most Improved Player. During the 1995-96 season, he averaged 19 points and nearly 7 assists while playing over 35 minutes a game. There were no signs of decline. Then came the protest. He stopped standing for the national anthem, calling the flag a symbol of oppression. At first, no one noticed. He stayed in the locker room or stretched on the sideline. But when the media caught on, the league reacted. He was suspended, fined over $31,000, and told he had to stand. He agreed, but stood silently, praying with his eyes closed and hands raised. That was the compromise. What followed wasn't subtle. He got death threats, hate mail, and was booed relentlessly. 2 Denver radio hosts even played the anthem in a mosque as a stunt. His minutes dropped. The Nuggets traded him, and his numbers immediately fell. He went from nearly 20 points per game to 13, and then down to 7 the year after. By age 29, he was done in the NBA. He briefly returned in the 2000 season with Vancouver, but played just 12 minutes a game and averaged 6.5 points. He said the protest forced him out, and he didn't walk that back later. He doubled down, saying it cost him everything. Then came more controversy. In 2001, he suggested the 9/11 attacks might have been an inside job. That statement, he said, sealed any chance of another NBA look. He continued to play overseas, kept mentoring, and joined the Big Three League in 2016. There, he kept the same protest, standing silently in prayer during the anthem. Today, his story is often compared to Colin Kaepernick's. Both spoke out, both were punished, and both never fully came back. Abdul-Rauf's legacy isn't just stats or awards. It's a moment where protest met professional fallout, and the league turned away. He didn't change. The opportunities just disappeared. Latrell Sprewell. In October of 2004, he turned down a 3-year deal worth $21 million from the Timberwolves and dropped the now infamous line, "I've got a family to feed." That number was half of what he'd been making, and apparently it wasn't close to what he wanted. He refused mid-level offers, veteran minimums, everything. To him, those deals were insults. That season didn't exactly help his case. His numbers dipped to just under 13 points per game in a little over 30 minutes. For someone who was part of a Big Three the season before, it was a sharp slide. Even with that, teams like the Nuggets, Cavaliers, and Rockets showed rumored interest after his contract ended in 2005. But he didn't budge. He waited for something bigger. It never came. By 2006, he'd effectively walked away. Not officially retired, just done. All because he wouldn't take less. He said he'd rather stay home than play for the minimum. And that's exactly what happened. The man who once helped take the Timberwolves to 58 wins and a deep playoff run was suddenly just gone from the league. The money he walked away from, add it all up, and it's nearly $98 million in total career earnings left behind. And the fallout came quick. His yacht was repossessed, his homes foreclosed, and his name kept popping up as a cautionary tale in finance blogs and sports shows alike. His decline wasn't just about stats. It was about expectations, pride, and a refusal to settle. He still had value on the court. He just helped carry a contender, but teams weren't meeting his price, and he wasn't going to lower it. He never used the word blackballed, but he didn't need to. The silence from teams and his firm stance made it clear he'd sidelined himself. The story's been retold countless times. He gambled on his worth, believed he deserved more, and then got nothing. Not because the skills vanished overnight, but because he wasn't willing to play for less. And that decision shut the door on his career permanently. Carmelo Anthony. After his time in Oklahoma City and Houston, he said it felt like he was fired. Not cut, not waived, fired. In his interview with Stephen A. Smith, he talked about sitting across from a general manager and hearing his services were no longer needed. When he asked what he'd done wrong, they told him he hadn't done anything at all. That moment stuck with him. It wasn't about stats or drama, it was just over. In Oklahoma City, he averaged 16 points per game, but never really fit into the Westbrook and George-led system. Then came Houston. 10 games in, the Rockets said they were moving on. No real explanation, just done. Melo didn't retire, he didn't get hurt. Teams just stopped calling. He said the silence was louder than anything. No team gave him a reason, and that's why he called it blackballing. To him, it didn't make sense. He still had game, and yet no one gave him a shot. For over a year, he waited. Nothing. Critics said it wasn't personal. They pointed to age, declining defense, and his reluctance to take a bench role. Some fans backed that up too, saying he couldn't or wouldn't adjust. Others disagreed. They thought it was a silent freeze-out. Then Portland finally gave him a chance in late 2019, and he delivered. He averaged over 22 points per game and even won Western Conference Player of the Week. He showed he could still put the ball in the basket, still help a team, and still compete. That comeback didn't erase the gap, but it definitely raised questions. Was he really too far gone? Or did teams just decide they didn't want the extra spotlight? That year-long silence felt strategic. To him, it wasn't about his ability. It was about being pushed out without a reason. Whether you think it was about fit, ego, or just aging out of the system, the facts are clear. He wanted to play, was still productive, and teams weren't interested. Melo's story sits right at the center of the blackball debate. He didn't say maybe, he said it happened. And for a while, the league didn't say anything back. Stephon Marbury, when asked if he thought he was blackballed from the NBA, he didn't dodge it. He said he knew he was better than a lot of the guards still playing. He didn't drop names, didn't accuse the league directly, but the meaning was clear. He believed his talent alone should have kept him on a roster. His NBA career officially ended in 2009 after a short run with the Celtics. But before that, his exit was building. His years with the Knicks were messy. There were clashes with coaches like Larry Brown and Isaiah Thomas, drama off the court, and a clear drop in minutes and influence. Still, he was a two-time All-Star with a career average that didn't exactly scream finished. Marbury never pointed to one moment or one villain. He didn't claim a coordinated league effort. What he said was simpler. He still had the game, and he watched others get signed who, in his view, weren't at his level. That's what frustrated him. To him, the league passed him over when he knew he could still contribute. Then he went to China, and everything changed. From 2010 to 2018, he dominated the Chinese Basketball Association. He won 3 championships, picked up a finals MVP, and basically became a legend over there. Statues, museums, even a permanent home. So yeah, it's hard to argue he didn't still have it. His time in China backed up what he said. He didn't fall off. He just fell out of favor. He never said the NBA conspired to keep him out. He said he should have been in because of his talent, not because of connections or image or reputation, just basketball. The quote wasn't about bitterness. It was about belief. He knew what he could do. And watching other guys suit up while he was sidelined only made that belief louder. So, no confirmed blackball, no known ban. Just a former All-Star who felt he was pushed aside too early and proved overseas that he wasn't done. Whether teams saw him as too much of a risk or too much of a personality, they never gave him another shot. And that he never forgot. Royce White, drafted 16th overall in 2012. He entered the league with real talent and a reputation as a unique prospect, but he also came in with generalized anxiety disorder and a fear of flying. 2 things that don't mix well with an 82-game schedule and coast-to-coast travel. He asked for a bus, literally. He wanted to take a bus to some games rather than fly, and emphasized that mental health should be treated with the same weight as any physical condition. At first, the Rockets seemed open to it, but when it came time for real decisions, things broke down fast. He sat out training camp, then refused assignments until the team implemented a mental health protocol. Instead of adapting, the team suspended him in January of 2013. He was eventually traded to the Sixers, but waived before ever playing a game. Sacramento gave him a shot, 3 games. That was it. No injuries, no public meltdowns, just a quiet, hard stop. He never played in the NBA again. White didn't stay quiet. He went public about it all, said the league branded him a distraction, and turned its back on him for refusing to be silent. In 2018, he said flat out, he was blackballed for talking about mental health. Not performance, not drama, just for speaking up and asking for support. Meanwhile, in Canada's National Basketball League, he dominated. 2 championships, MVP awards, and a bunch of triple-double. He showed he could still play at a high level, but still, nothing from the NBA, not even a whisper. His numbers were there. The skill was intact, and yet no team reached out. White never claimed there was a formal conspiracy. He said teams were uncomfortable with him pushing for policy change and unwilling to accommodate something outside the norm. He didn't blend in, so he got left out. Whether that was blackballing or just stubborn front offices is still debated. But White's belief is simple. He got shut out, not because of talent, but because he demanded the NBA take mental health seriously, and they weren't ready. Jimmer Fredette. He's been clear he thinks the league gave up on him too early. After being drafted 10th overall in 2011, he lit up crowds in Sacramento with the kind of range that's now a league-wide trend. But back then, he said the system just didn't fit. No green light, no trust. No time to adjust. He described how coaches from opposing teams would scheme against him the second he checked in. They'd run plays specifically to attack him on defense. That does a number on your confidence, especially when your own squad isn't giving you consistent minutes or a defined role. Fredette also pointed to what he called a league-wide bias. He said NBA teams leaned heavily toward early developers. Players that exploded right out the gate got room to fail, to find rhythm. He didn't get that grace period. At BYU, he got to run the show. In the NBA, he said the opportunities dried up the moment he didn't shine immediately. Fans on forums added another angle. They said Fredette didn't seem interested in being a role player. They claimed he still played like a top scorer off the bench, sticking to isolation-heavy habits instead of adjusting his game. Fair or not, that reputation stuck. Then came China. He went overseas and torched the CBA, scoring 73 in a single game and averaging 40 points per night in some seasons. It wasn't just a highlight reel. It was proof that he could still fill it up if the ball was in his hands. Fredette said he was ahead of his time. And looking at today's game, with deep shooters launching at will, he might have a point. The league wasn't ready to build around that style back then. And once he fell out of rotation, no team made space for him to grow into something else. He didn't say he was blackballed. He said he was overlooked, miscast, and rushed out before he had a real chance to evolve. His overseas success wasn't a second act. It was the performance that never happened here. The league moved on. He thinks they moved on too soon. Mark Jackson. He's been out of the head coaching seat since 2014. But if you ask him, it's not because of performance. It's not because of results. He said it himself. He believes he's been blackballed. And this latest Knicks hire, another coaching cycle ends without his name called. Again, he posted a message right after Mike Brown's press conference in New York. And while he didn't mention names, the tone was anything but subtle. He talked about being qualified, having the resume, and still getting passed over. He told listeners to stay ready, something he's clearly been doing for a decade. Back in Golden State, he led the Warriors to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. In 2013-14, they won 51 games. That was before the dynasty. He had Curry, Thompson, Green, but before the rings, before the juggernaut. Steve Kerr took them to another level, but Jackson was the one who helped change the culture. Still, he was fired right after that second playoff run. Officially, it was a decision about direction. Unofficially, the whispers have always been louder. People have pointed to his strong religious views and locker room tension. Some reports claimed he made homophobic remarks. Whether that's fully accurate or not, the effect is the same. Teams stopped calling. He did get close in 2022 when Sacramento named him a finalist. But again, Mike Brown got the job. He's openly said he still wants to coach, whether it's in the NBA or college. He believes he can still build culture, still impact lives, still win. As the years have passed, his coaching record hasn't changed. 121 wins, 101 losses, one culture shift in Golden State that still gets credit in hindsight, but no second chance. Now he's podcasting, still working, still speaking publicly. His messages are half motivation, half frustration. He talks about patience, timing, and faith. But underneath that, it's clear he sees himself as someone the league left behind, not because he couldn't coach, but because they decided they didn't want him back. And that feeling hasn't gone away. Larry Sanders. In December of 2014, he walked away from the NBA, not because of injury or lack of talent, but because his mind and body were crashing. He had a breakdown during Christmas practice with the Bucks and never returned. Anxiety, depression, and emotional exhaustion pushed him out at just 26 years old. 2 months later, Milwaukee bought out the rest of his $44 million deal. He left $21 million on the table and explained his decision in a Players Tribune piece. He said he needed to heal, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. He said if he ever felt ready again, he'd come back. He did try. In 2016, he signed with the Cavaliers. He only lasted 5 games. Cleveland waived him, citing off-court issues and concerns about his readiness. And that was it. No team picked him up after that. No second shot. Sanders never accused teams of anything direct. He didn't throw around the word blackballed, but he made it clear he believed teams were reluctant, not because he couldn't play, but because of what he'd walked away from, because of what he represented. A player who said no. A player who put mental health before basketball. He said his body and mind were elite, but that his environment wasn't. He tried to return, worked to get into shape, stayed open to opportunities, but the league stayed cold. He dominated on defense when he was in his prime. He was a nightmare in the paint. Yet when he said he was ready again, the calls didn't come. It wasn't a public fallout. It wasn't drama or controversy. It was quiet hesitation. Teams didn't know if he'd stay. They didn't want the uncertainty. And that was enough to keep the door shut. His story still matters. It shows that even now, mental health still makes front offices nervous. Sanders left on his terms, but when he came back, they weren't interested. He didn't disappear because he couldn't play. He disappeared because the league didn't know what to do with someone who said, "I need help." Jared Mustaf. In July of 1993, his pregnant girlfriend Althea Hayes was found shot and killed. Mustaf wasn't charged, but authorities named him an investigative lead. His cousin, Levani Wooten, was convicted of the murder and sentenced to life. Mustaf, meanwhile, invoked the Fifth Amendment in grand jury proceedings, and the shadow of the case followed him everywhere. The Phoenix Suns, who had signed him to a 4-year deal, bought out his remaining contract in 1994, leaving nearly $4 million on the table. That wasn't a performance cut, it was a fallout move. He was still eligible to play, but the NBA landscape changed fast. Mustaf later said clearly, "Whether I was blackballed isn't even a question." He believed the league gave up on him because of the stigma, not because of anything proven. And teams' actions lined up with that. In 1996, both Seattle and Charlotte signed him. One kept him for 3 days, the other for a week. Neither played him. Both let him go quickly. Media reports at the time said the allegations were a factor. No conviction, no trial, just the perception. He wasn't out of basketball. He played in Europe for years. Spain, Turkey, Greece, Poland. But the NBA never called again. He was just 25 when the door shut, and they never reopened. Mustaf never walked back his belief. He said he was unfairly cast out of the league, and that his name stayed radioactive even after the case was closed. The crime wasn't his, but the aftermath was. His playing ability didn't vanish. His reputation was what teams didn't want to touch. There was no official suspension, no statement from the league, just silence. And when he spoke later about that silence, he didn't hedge. He said he was blackballed, flat out. The evidence supports it. Teams brought him in, then let him go, quickly, repeatedly. He never got to clear his name on the court. He just vanished from the NBA, still in his prime, still able to play, not because of guilt, because of the suspicion. Connie Hawkins. In 1961, while still a freshman at Iowa, his name came up in a college basketball point shaving scandal. He wasn't arrested, wasn't indicted, and couldn't have even shaved points. He wasn't eligible to play varsity yet, but that didn't matter. The NCAA expelled him, revoked his scholarship, and barred him from transferring anywhere with a basketball eligibility. Then the NBA stepped in. Commissioner J. Walter Kennedy refused to approve his contract, citing league policy to avoid even a whiff of gambling. No charges, no trial. But Hawkins was effectively banned, informally at first, formally by 1966. So Hawkins sued, a $6 million antitrust case. And in 1969, after a Life magazine article dismantled the so-called case against him, the NBA settled. They paid him about $1.3 million and assigned him to the Phoenix Suns. He was 27 when he finally made his NBA debut. Lost years, lost prime. And still, he averaged 24.6 points and 10.4 rebounds his rookie season, first team All-NBA, 4 straight All-Star appearances. This was a guy the league had shut out based on nothing but suspicion. And when he got in, he was dominant. He finished his career with nearly 20 points, 9 rebounds, and almost 4 assists per game. He played for the Suns, Lakers, and Hawks. His peak was shortened by the ban, but not erased. In 1992, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. By then, it was obvious to everyone. He belonged all along. His story isn't just a career delayed, it's the most clear-cut case of NBA blackballing in league history. Banned without evidence. Redeemed only after public pressure and a legal. Hawkins didn't just lose time. He lost trust in the system that should have protected him. But he proved he could rise above it. His legacy is a warning and a triumph. Talent doesn't always get its shot. And sometimes, justice comes far too late. Andre Blatche. In July of 2012, the Wizards used the amnesty clause to cut ties with him, wiping out the final $23 million of his contract. But it wasn't just a roster move to him, it was personal. He said flat out, "They tried to end me." That season, Blatche struggled. His numbers dropped to 8.5 points and just under 6 rebounds per game. By March, the team sent him home, citing conditioning. But Blatche didn't see it as discipline. He saw it as abandonment. In interviews that fall, he tore into the organization, saying they left him out to dry when fans turned on him. He said if the Wizards were supposed to be family, they sure didn't act like it. He felt they watched the booze pile up, let the media spin the locker room cancer narrative, and said nothing. He claimed it was all a setup to make him look like the problem, so they could move on without taking the blame. Blatche admitted his conditioning wasn't great, but what he couldn't accept was the silence from the front office, especially after they'd signed him to an extension just 2 years earlier. Once things got tough, he said, they used his struggles as a convenient excuse to cut him loose and reshaped the narrative. He made it clear he believed the damage was intentional, not just a benching, not just a business decision, a reputational hit. He said they let him become the scapegoat, called the locker room rumors fabricated, and claimed the organization made sure teams thought he was a liability. Despite all that, he got picked up by Brooklyn not long after and played solid minutes. But that Wizards chapter never stopped stinging. To him, it wasn't just about getting waived, it was about how they did it and how little they did to defend him. No lawsuits, no formal accusations, just a former player who felt burned by the same team that once saw him as a franchise piece. And in his own words, they didn't just move on, they tried to end him. Jeremy Lin, after starring at Harvard and dropping big games on top programs, he still went undrafted in the 2010 NBA draft. He said multiple times he believes race played a role. In a major interview, he said, "I had a gut feeling that my ethnicity contributed to not getting drafted." His coach backed him, saying recruiters overlooked Lin while giving scholarships to less talented players who weren't Asian. Even Rockets GM Daryl Morey later admitted everyone, including himself, misjudged Lin's athleticism, suggesting the only real reason was his race. Once in the league, he broke out during Linsanity. But Lin said part of the hype was driven by low expectations. He called it the soft bigotry of low expectations, saying he had to keep playing at a high level far longer than others to shake off the racial framing. He felt he always had to prove that he belonged. He also dealt with racism on the court, from youth leagues to Harvard and even in the NBA. He said opponents used slurs and that it wasn't rare. He told stories about taunts, both subtle and direct, that kept following him. During one college game, fans shouted racial slurs, specifically the C word, and in the NBA, the media piled on too. ESPN once used the phrase C word in the armor as a headline after a Knicks loss. A Fox Sports commentator tweeted a crude racial joke. Both were forced to apologize, but the damage was already out there. Academic studies confirmed it. Coverage of Lin often leaned on stereotypes. Words like surprising, unexpected, smart, and hardworking came up constantly. Phrases often used to describe Asian athletes who outperform low expectations. While some coverage praised him objectively, a lot of it leaned into racial framing, subtly undermining his athleticism or presenting his success as an anomaly. Lin has never said he was blackballed, but he's been clear that race shaped his journey. From overlooked prospect to global sensation, he had to work twice as hard just to be seen as equal. His breakout wasn't just basketball. It was a statement against a system that still underestimated him because of how he looked.